right, welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. You're watching Unbiased Magic Reviews, the most objective magic review channel here on YouTube. Today I have an exclusive requested top 5 mentalism review for you guys. I'm going over my top 5 propless mentalism effects part 2. Now you may remember a couple of years ago I went over my top 5 propless mentalism effects, and since then I've gotten numerous requests to do a second top 5 propless mentalism effect review. And it has taken me quite a while, and the main reason is because you guys know I only recommend things that I road test myself and mentalism effects that I tell you guys are really worth picking up that are not going to end up in your junk drawer. That's probably the main reason for this. And also because I came up with stricter criteria for this top 5 review. So I'm going to go over a couple of preliminary things, just some preliminary thoughts for you guys, might help you think about your own mentalism. And then we're going to get into a couple of notable mentions, my criteria, and then of course the new top 5 propless mentalism effects. So the first question you may be wondering is, why should you even consider propless mentalism in general? You know, you've probably heard a lot of things that it's pipe dreams, it doesn't work. And the reality is that good propless mentalism works very well and it's very efficient. The problem is that we are bombarded with just so much propless mentalism and just so many effects in general that it's hard to weed through the crap. The garbage. It's hard to weed through the garbage and pick out just those items that are really worth picking up and learning and using and adapting to your own mentalism. Now, if you're not really familiar with propless mentalism is another tool in your toolbox to help you expand your repertoire, your routines, add to existing routines to make them more robust, more complete, more elaborate. Just help to really make that experience between you and the spectators just that much more rich and full. And so you may be wondering, does this propless mentalism really work? It really does, and the main reason is because we are influenced by our surroundings. Our brain is designed to see patterns in everyday life. When you meet someone new, you automatically put them in a box, whether you like it or not. It's just how our brain works. When you see something, you look for pattern recognition. We are constantly primed by our surroundings, and that's why things like advertisements work so well on us. In fact, I'm going to show you right now how easy it is to prime somebody. Let's do a very quick, simple experiment just so you can see for yourself. I'm going to mention a word 10 times and I want you to repeat it with me, and then at the end I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to just answer it out loud, okay? So you're going to repeat this word with me. Milk, 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 milk. What do cows drink? You may have found yourself jumping to say the word milk. Reality is that cows don't drink milk, they drink water. But you can see how easy it is to prime a person. You may be laughing right now, like just surprised how your brain jumped to that without you even thinking. And that is the main reason why propless mentalism works so well on people. When you ask a person to just freely think of a color, a name, a place, an animal, it may seem like they have an unrestricted choice, but the reality is that we are really influenced by our own experiences and our surroundings, and that is why people in general are going to select one of a handful of things almost always and universally. And that's why propless mentalism is such a great tool to add to your repertoire. So let's get into a couple of notable mentions, and then we're going to go into my criteria for this review. These notable mentions are excellent propless mentalism effects, or virtually propless, and the main reason that they didn't meet the top 5 list is because either the top 5 are better or they didn't meet the criteria that I'm mentioning. But with so much propless mentalism out there, I thought I would give you guys a couple of notable mentions of items that I've gotten extensive use out of, that I have a blast with all the time, and stuff that you may want to incorporate into your own routines and your own performances. And that is why you watch these reviews, so that way you can learn about these rare gems that no one else is going to tell you about. So starting out with the first notable mention, we have Prometheus, and this is by Manos Kartsakis in his book Unveil. Now, you may remember that he put out a whole book on witch hand type effects that was called V, and in there was an effect that was called Verbalist. I had a blast with that. Well, what he's done here with Prometheus is he's taken it and just elevated another level. Now, the effect is virtually propless. You can do it at the drop of a hat. You just need 2 spectators and some small object they can put in their hand. Traditionally, they use a coin, but you could use anything small, even like a jelly bean. Personally, if you're curious, I like to actually include a prediction. So I'll write a prediction on a piece of paper and ball it up and have them hide the ball in one of their hands. And that just makes the whole thing so much stronger. Again, my idea, what I use, part of the reason why maybe you're watching this, just get other ideas of things you can do. But the effect is very simple. You tell your 2 spectators that you're going to have one person tell the truth, the other person is going to lie, but you don't know which is which. They're going to hide the object in one of their hands. Of course, you and the other people watching don't know where it's hidden. You're going to ask each person just one question, and afterwards you're going to also have each person make a mental choice based on where the object is. You can immediately reveal the mental choice that each person has made right there in real time, and then immediately tell them where the object is. So it's very strong, and it plays really well, especially if you have a large group of people watching, and that's because you can have the other people try to figure out as well, and they're going to be completely amazed because they're going to have no clue where anything is. They'll have no idea who's lying or who's telling the truth. And so it's a really nice little quick propless type effect. Again, I call it propless because you really don't need anything. You could use almost any small tiny object that you had there. But anyway, you can see why this doesn't meet my criteria for the top 5 list, but it really isn't a virtually propless effect. And the fact that you're revealing a mental selection that each person made in their mind, they just made in their mind, it will totally blow them away. It will blow away your audience, and especially that kicker at the end where you immediately identify where the object is. Very, very strong. So that's the first notable mention I wanted to tell you guys about. I would urge you to go and try to hunt down Manos's book Unveil. It's definitely worth picking up. So the next notable mention is actually part of an effect, and it's by Nico Heinrich, and the effect is called Easy Billet Opener. Now, I'm not saying that the Easy Billet Opener is the effect that I'm talking about here. What I'm really talking about is just the propless mental force that is included in that effect. So if you pick up his book Dopamine, you will read this effect, Easy Billet Opener, and it is an effect that's designed to be done with a large group of people where you whittle them down to one person and then you reveal a thought that they have. And in fact, there are other mentalists that have used this routine and adapted it to their professional working set, like Timon Kraus, for example. If you watch Timon Kraus's Penguin Live lecture, you'll see a routine that he does, which is basically borrowed from this idea from Nico Heinrich. But the reason I'm mentioning it to you guys is because in this routine, he has a spectator think of something, and then they think of an animal, and you can immediately reveal it. You can use this for pre-show. You can incorporate it into your mentalism effects that you do already. It's an excellent propless mental force that you can use anytime you want. It's an extremely rare gem, I would say. And the reason why I say that is because it's something that you can utilize whenever you want. It's something you can have in your back pocket. And it's not something that's widely known, I don't think, because, I mean, unless you have Dopamine, unless you pick that up. So again, it's like something that's kind of like under the hood. So I just mentioned it to you guys as a notable mention because I think you're going to get a lot of use out of it. I've gotten extensive use out of it, as you can see, which is why I'm mentioning it. All right, moving along to the next notable mention and the last one that I'm going to give you guys. This is an effect that is from the Unknown Mentalist, and it is called Psychopath. That is the name of it. It's a very quick propless mentalism effect. Unfortunately, you can only do it in English, so that's one of the reasons why it's not part of my top 5 propless mentalism effects here. But the effect is really quick. It can be done in under a minute. It can be done anywhere, anytime. What you do is you tell a spectator you're going to play a game with them. You're going to tell them that pretend that they are like a psychopath out on the run and you're like a psychic detective. You have them think of, you tell them you want them to think of one of 4 continents, one of 4 directions, and then they make a mental selection, and then you tell them that you're going to say 4 words and you want them to make an association with one of those 4 random words that you say, and then you can immediately read their mind and reveal the word that they're thinking of. So it's a very simple Propless effect, and the principle is extremely simple when you read it, but you'll probably be smiling because it works really well. Again, the only real limitation to it is that it has to be done in English. So for those people, people like that the English isn't their primary language may not like that, which is why this is just a notable mention. But again, I mention it because it's very simple to do and something that I've used extensively. So those are a couple of notable mentions for you guys. We're going to get into now the criteria for my top 5 Propless Mentalism effects, part 2. So the criteria that I used, I have some primary criteria and secondary criteria. The primary criteria is the following. Should seem very basic and simple, but that's why it's primary, okay? For number 1, all these effects are Propless effects, okay? That's pretty simple and straightforward. Number 2, all these effects are impromptu in nature, meaning no setup involved, no dual reality. We're not using like any extra people, nothing like that. And then finally, the last primary criteria that I wanted to go over was no pipe dreams. Now, what does that mean, no pipe dreams? What I mean is like no extensive fishing, okay? So many of you probably know, and you've probably had the experience that you've purchased some type of Propless Mentalism effect only to be very discouraged that there's extensive fishing involved. Something that's not very reliable, something that's not very practical. And I hate to say these words out loud, but I'm going to say them out loud. But like Propless Mentalism, like from Fraser Parker or Peter Turner, and I hate to say that out loud and just make that huge generalization, but maybe you've had that experience that I've had where you've picked up some Propless Mentalism from one of these known mentalists, and unfortunately it's not very practical. There's all of these crazy things you have to do, these hanging statements and this and that and all of this other stuff that in the real world doesn't play very well, and it feels like you're just guessing and fishing. And that is the type of Propless Mentalism that I don't like at all. I like Propless Mentalism that relies on principles that are strong, that are reliable, and stuff where a spectator seemingly has a completely free choice, but they're actually narrowed themselves into a corner without even knowing it. Where really when you read their mind, all you're doing is whittling down between one of 2 things. You know what I mean? That's the type of Propless Mentalism that I like. I don't like this idea of Propless Mentalism where there's extensive guesswork involved, because then it doesn't look very real. Now, I know that there are some really skilled mentalists out there like Peter Turner that can get away with who knows what, but for the majority of us, we need stuff that we can count on and stuff that is reliable, which is why I'm including that as part of the criteria of this top 5 Propless Mentalism effects. All right, I know that was a mouthful. That was just the primary criteria. The secondary criteria that I've come up with is the following, is that I wanted to make sure that these effects could work in any language. Because after my first review, I've had many people ask me, like, does this work in German? Does this work in another language? So I've decided that this top 5 Propless Mentalism review is going to focus on effects that can work in any language. This is language independent, which is great. And then the other criteria was I wanted to make sure that there was no mathematics. The main reason is, again, because there is so much Propless Mentalism out there. There is an extensive amount that relies on, think of a number, double that number, do this, do that. You know, there's a lot of really slick and clever math Propless Mentalism effects out there. But a lot of people want to stay away from that because then it just feels like a math trick, you know? And so I've decided for this top 5 Propless Mentalism review that I was going to just eliminate all those effects. So none of these rely on any mathematics at all. And that's really the criteria that I set for this top 5 review. All right, so let's get into the list of top 5 Propless Mentalism effects, part 2. Keep in mind that if you think I missed something on this list, please just leave me a comment below, but make sure it fits the criteria that I've outlined, or else don't mention it. Now, this list is in order of least to most favorite. Starting out with number 5, we have an effect called Voiceless by Ali Forutan. mentalist. I think he's from Iran, and this Propless Mentalism effect is one of those effects you can do anytime, anywhere. You can even perform it over video chat. You explain to the spectator that in a moment you're going to have them think of something. You can have them think of a random playing card or something simple that they can draw, and you tell them that you want them to hold their hands out and imagine that one hand represents yes, the other hand represents no. They can choose which is which. You don't know which one is yes or which one is no. And when you ask them a question, you want them to focus on the palm of that hand that has the answer without saying anything out loud. You ask them a couple of questions and then you can immediately tell them what they're thinking of. The principle and method is devious and can be expanded and utilized in many different directions, not just to reveal a playing card or something simple that they can draw. Although from personal experience, I can tell you that it is very easy and very reliable with a random playing card that the person has thought of, and something that you can incorporate to some other mentalism effect that you already do now. I've had a lot of fun with it. I think that you guys are gonna like it a lot. The spectator will never be able to reverse engineer it. They'll have no idea how you did it. In fact, they're gonna really like it a lot too. So that's number 5 on my list. Moving along to number 4, we have a pin number reveal from Drew Backenstoss called Elementary. Now, there's a lot of history behind this effect. And in fact, I think right now it's not even available anymore. I don't think you can pick it up. So I think you may have to reach out to Drew Backenstoss if you want to pick up the book. It's about 300 pages, and it is actually originally based on an effect by Thaddeus Barker, his original Sherlock effect. Now, you guys may remember about 2 years ago, I did a review on Sherlock 2.0 where I told you guys that the effect was totally rubbish. I told you to stay away from it. I don't know if even you guys looked at the comments, but Thaddeus Barker sat there and argued with me up and down about it, telling me that I didn't know what I was talking about because I said that the effect was impractical, that it was a bunch of fishing. Well, the funny part is this, is that Drew Backenstoss has taken Sherlock and fixed it to come up with this routine, Elementary. Not only has he fixed the original routine and extensively improved it, but he's also come up with lots of different variations in this book. And if you do pick this up, at the very back of the book, at the very end, Thaddeus Barker himself actually writes a small little blurb there. It's in the end where he actually admits that he thought his effect Sherlock was like the final word on this kind of idea, but that he was wrong, and he admits freely that Elementary far exceeds his original effect. The reason I even mentioned to you guys was because I was the only one back then that told people to stay away from Sherlock. And it's kind of funny because, you know, when you go back, you can look at reviews from other people and they were recommending it to people. And I was the only one that told people stay away from this. And even the creator was arguing with me only later to actually publish in this book that he was wrong, because obviously his effect really wasn't as good as he thought it was. Anyway, that's just like a side note. So this effect, Elementary, it's a Propless pin number divination, but much different than many other Propless pin number divinations. There's no fishing involved because of the elaborate presentation and script that you get from Drew Backenstoss. You're going to learn how to present this where the spectator seemingly comes up with a completely free 4-digit pin number, but you amazingly can almost instantly reveal it to them. So it's a very strong piece of Propless mentalism. Overall, it'll take you between 2 and 3 minutes to perform. It's not as quick as you think. There are no mathematics involved, and again, it can be done in any language. It's really strong, and if you do pick this up, then you will learn many different variations of it, even a version that is completely silent, which is great. Personally, myself, I've used this especially as a kicker after performing Deadlock. So if you have Deadlock and you perform it, then you can also use this to also perform it even afterwards. I've had a lot of success with doing Deadlock and then immediately afterwards, saying, let's try it again, especially when spectators wanted to see something else or they wanted to see it done again. I would put that away and say, okay, let's try it again, but let's just do it in your mind without anything, you know? And so it's really strong in that way, using it in that, at least I've done it in that way. So it's one of those effects that you are gonna have to dedicate some time to learn it, especially to learning the script, which is really important. But afterwards, you'll have a Propless pin divination at your fingertips and something you can rely on and go back to again and again. Again, it's something that I highly recommend to you guys, which is why this is number 4 on my list. All right, moving along to number 3 of my Propless Mentalism Effects Part 2, we have Animalistic by Alexander Laguna. Now you can pick this up for $15 from Penguin Magic. It is a Propless animal divination effect where you have a spectator think of an animal and you immediately reveal it. Now, it is advertised that it can be done in any language. I've only done it in English, but it is a type of effect that you can do anytime, anywhere. The whole thing is over in less than a minute. You're given a couple of different options of how you can present it, and I actually have changed my presentation a little bit just to make it a little bit easier, but that's just through trial and error on my own. For those people, if any of you actually do pick this up and you have any questions about that, you can just message me directly and we can talk about it, because I think I found a way of performing it which makes it even a little bit more convincing. But that's just, again, from my own trial and error. This is number 3 on my list, mainly because there's very, very little memory work involved, and you get really maximal impact for that because you're going to have a Propless divination effect that's ready to go and something that you can add to existing routines just to make them stronger, or even just use it as a standalone piece. So this is number 3 on my list. Moving along to number 2, we have an effect from Matt Mello, and this is System 1. Now you guys may remember that I did talk about Matt Mello in his book Psyware in my last top 5 Propless Mentalism Effects reviews. Now, this Propless Mentalism effect is a Propless revelation, Propless divination of a color. And this is very economical because you could pick this up, I think they're selling it for $10. So you can pick this up for $10 from Penguin Magic, and you're going to get a Propless color reveal, which is extremely strong. It is going to take some time to really learn what you need to learn to perform it. There is some memory work involved, and if you know the work of Matt Mello, then you shouldn't be too surprised about it. But the general gist of the effect is as follows. You have a person think of a color. You tell them to think of a color, and then you tell them that you're going to name some different items, and you want them to just focus on the item that is the same color that they're thinking of. And then you tell them that you want them to stop you, somewhere down the road after you've named the item that they're thinking of, and then you're going to read their mind, and that's exactly what you do. You name these items, and somewhere along the line they stop you. You immediately can tell them the color they're thinking of and the object that they're thinking of. So the principle is very clever, very reliable, extremely easy to perform. The only difficult part, again, is just the memory involved, because you have to memorize those items. Now, Matt Mello has come up with some clever type of dialogue to help you to learn those items, and especially in the order that you have to learn them. But what you're really going to like about this is that the principle is really, really slick. It's really intelligent principle, and because of that, even though the spectator is going to feel like it's impossible that you could know what they're thinking of because of so many items that you say, it's just going to them, they're never going to have any clue how you have any idea of what they're thinking about. Again, it's another excellent tool that you can use and something that can go right into your repertoire. Again, I've had a lot of fun with it. And speaking of Psyware, for those people that have asked me about it as well, Psyware, again, it's also another excellent effect, but does utilize some principles that you have to really remember, a pretty long list. In fact, if you do have Psyware, I only used the first list because I didn't want to bother learning more than that, but that's even enough to perform that. I just mentioned that as an aside. I think that this is easier than Psyware. If you are curious, this is actually easier to learn than Psyware, and it's something that you can use very quickly. Just the idea that the person just randomly thinks of a color and you almost immediately are going to reveal that and the object that they're thinking of, because you name multiple objects that have a similar color, it really is going to mess with their mind a little bit. So it's a great effect, and that's why it's number 2 on my list. All right, moving along to my number 1 pick for this top 5 Propless Mentalism effects reviews part 2. You shouldn't be surprised that it goes to Pheidon Billick and his effect Lexicon from his book Orion Pleiades. Now you can pick up his 2-book Orion series for about $400 from your favorite magic dealer. There is a wealth of mentalism in the book. In fact, there's a ton of Propless mentalism in the book, but this is my absolute favorite Propless mentalism effect. And the reason is because it seems absolutely impossible to your spectator. You have the spectator think of something, and then they're going to think of a word, any word that they want, an interesting word that's at least 5 or 6 letters, something that they could see and touch, and you ask them a series of about 4 or 5 questions that are just yes or no answers, and then you can immediately reveal to them the word that they're thinking of, which may seem absolutely impossible, especially from how many different words exist out there. There are so many of them. And for that reason, I think it's extremely strong. Now, this principle and this whole routine is something that obviously I only perform it in English, but it supposedly can be adapted to any language, which is great. And I think that Pheidon performs it in Greek as well. So I think that it is there too, but obviously it is presented in English in the book. There really is nothing negative I could say about it, and the actual principle, when you read it, you'll really be surprised with it. There's very little memory work involved as well, as I mentioned, because you only have to ask about 4 or 5 questions and you know exactly what the person is thinking of. It's a really strong piece of mentalism. For that reason, it's my favorite Propless mentalism effect, and I think that you guys are really going to like it a lot too. And it's something that you can perform in like a minute. So again, it's one of those effects that just checks all the boxes. So if you're not familiar with Pheidon Billick's work or his books Orion, definitely should take a look at it, because there's a lot of really good mentalism effects in there. So this is my list of top 5 Propless mentalism effects part 2. Hopefully there's something on here that you like, something that's piqued your interest. As I mentioned, I've extensively road tested all of these items, which is why I recommend them to you guys. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, just leave them for me below in the comments. I hope this has been helpful to you. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning into my magic reviews, and I will see you on the next one.